Look at this soup. Look at that. We're making clam chowder. We start off with butter. If you're making it New England style, you would put some pancetta or fat back, which is the pork fat, and you'd render that pork in the butter until it was lightly brown and you extracted all the fat out. We're making this clam chowder without the fat back or the pancetta. Fresh bay leaves, little white pepper. I like my chowder to have big pieces of vegetable. We have celery. We want to get that celery in first because that's your hardest vegetable. Spanish onions. Now I'm making about 5 gallons of clam chowder, but it's the same process on how to make it. So we'll give you a recipe with smaller amounts to make 3 quarts. Because if you're going to make clam chowder, you might as well make at least 3 quarts. Cut your onions in a good size as well. I like to see my vegetables and potatoes in my chowder. But we got a medium-high heat on this. We got butter. Like I said, if you were doing it New England style, you would brown off some bacon or fatback or pancetta. Then you would start to saute the vegetables. White pepper, bay leaf is our only seasonings. Once it starts to get soft, this is normally where you would add flour. Because so many people are gluten-free these days, I'm going to use clear gel to thicken this up later. Flour gives you a better mouthfeel, though. It's more velvety. If I were making this for myself, I would use flour. All right, we've got heavy cream. I've got my chicken demi-glace that I make ahead of time and freeze in half-gallon tubs. I've got white wine. I've got my chopped ocean clams that we've drained. We got the juice from the clams. And we're going to show you what to do with that. While that's cooking, I cut my potatoes ahead of time, but I left one to show you. When you cut a potato for a chowder, you want to see the potato on your spoon. And you have to remember that when the potato cooks, it's going to get a little bit dinged up. So you want to make a nice big chunk like this. We're not going to be using the water, but I mean, that's what we're looking for. And we're going to be using some hot sauce. We don't want any color. We just want to get these to sweat and get soft. See how those are getting translucent? This is where you normally would add flour and make your roux right in there with the vegetables, but we're not going to do that. That would be technically the right way to make a New England clam chowder, using the fat back and putting the flour in at this time. This is the juice from the clams. It goes in with the white wine. The clams go in the container that we're going to put the soup in when we're all done. This is my chicken demi. That'll melt in there. 1 gallon of heavy cream, 40%. Strain the water out of the potatoes. Touch of hot sauce. That's my cayenne pepper sauce. So by the time this chicken demi-glace is melted down, the potatoes will start to finish cooking. The potatoes really can't cook until that demi melts. Normally, I already have it thawed out, but I didn't do it ahead of time, but that's okay. This still works. So this is our clear gel. Looks a lot like cornstarch. It's just modified cornstarch. You can freeze sauces that are made with this. They won't break like it would a roux. That's what the beauty of it is. And it's gluten-free. Not grain-free, but gluten-free. You can see the soup here. See how it's boiling? That chicken demi is gone. Usually when the liquid is boiling, that means our potatoes are done. If we can cut it with a spoon, they're firm, but they're still soft. So we're done. That came to a simmer. It's almost like clockwork. I've made this soup thousands of times. We got this on high heat. It came to a boil. The chicken demi is done. I've added some salt to this. That's all I've done. And add half of my starch, because you can always add more. I don't want it to be like wallpaper paste. I want it to be thin, like thin pancake batter. You know, and like with roux and cornstarch or clear gel or arrowroot or tapioca flour, you've got to cook it out. You just can't add the starch and take it off the stove. You got to let that starch cook. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like You can see how it's thickened up and it's starting to get shiny, but it's still a little loose. It's a little watery. So I'm going to add the other half of my starch. You don't put your clams in the soup at the end until your heat's off. Then you can put them in your pot. But you don't need to cook the clams anymore, and any more cooking that you do to the clams, they're going to get chewy and rubbery. So you need to get them hot enough so they kill all the bacteria, but you don't need to cook them. That's why we got them in our bucket here. We're going to pour this soup that's close to 200 degrees onto these clams, and we're going to be fine. Now, come back and take a look at this soup. It's got a little more creaminess and viscosity, but it's still, you can see it's loose. Because what's going to happen is while this soup is cooling, those potatoes are going to break down a little bit. You're adding like 8 pounds of clams. That's going to take up some density into this soup. So by the time, like I said, I've been making this so often that I know how much starch I need. So I'll be able to give you a small batch and you'll be able to make this clam chowder at home. You just need a few special ingredients. You need to have really good chicken broth. That's a key. Now, if you were making this in New England, you would use all clam juice. There would be no chicken stock in here. This is kind of like another pearl I'm giving you. You know, I use a homemade chicken broth to make my clam chowder. It makes it savory. It makes it good. It's not the right way, it's not the wrong way, it's Chef Greg's way. Okay? Just don't write in complaining about I don't know how to make clam chowder, because I can assure you I sell this for $20 a quart and I sell it out every week. It's delicious. It's made from scratch. Heavy cream, no water, clam juice, chicken demi. All right, I've let this cook out now about 3 or 4 minutes. All that starch is all cooked up nicely. Those potatoes now are starting to float in the soup instead of dropping right to the bottom. And as you can see, my pot here, I didn't burn it. All right, I'm going to chop up some parsley for that. If you beat your parsley like this, you'll bruise it and it gets juicy. Cut your parsley like this, okay? With a sharp knife. A dull knife, all you're doing is bruising it, and again, you'll end up with juicy chopped parsley. You don't want that. Make a clean cut every time you go down with the knife. Now, I'm not going to need all that parsley. We're going to need about half of it. And that parsley adds a nice flavor. You know, I love using fresh herbs in all my cooking. I just, everything I make has fresh herbs in it, except for desserts. And sometimes even there, too. But chopped Italian parsley, fresh dill, cilantro, chervil, basil, bay leaves. They add so much flavor. Just another layer that you don't expect. Look at that chowder. You know, we've got, just talking about the bay leaves. Look, we've got fresh bay leaves in here. Look at this soup. Every ladle has big potatoes, and there's clams in every bite. You know, put some clams in your clam chowder. There should be more clams than potato in your clam chowder, folks. Okay? But I mean, look at that. Not too thick. Because, you know, you got to remember, people are adding crackers and eating this with buttered bread. Now, I'd be eating this with buttered toast, but that's just me. You know, but I mean, look at that. And you can see that the potatoes are now suspended, but this is not too thick. That's not gloppy, crappy chowder. That's just got a beautiful creaminess to it. So don't over thicken.